Welcome to Windows on the World. Isn't it all getting exciting? We're having everything thrown at us all at once. You thought that COVID was a ride. Well, the ride's increasing, isn't it? Tonight we're going to get into all that. Yes, tonight, when smart is dumb, a look at the degeneration of minds and the worsening and ever more ridiculous propaganda that is driving change. Oh yes, change, the C word. It started being a dodgy word around 20 years ago. Change is now the word of the infidel, the liar, the cheat. Even media wannabes on the gatekeeping side are telling you to be the change you want to see. Well, you just don't want change, do you? This was screamed in my face years ago when I was opposing Agenda 21 in northeast London. And of course, that was a hotbed of change agents. It was the original mini Holland. That's where sustainability started in that part of London. Spread outwards, of course, there was Kingston and Enfield, all these mini Holland TfL funded gulags. Well, they are gulags now, you know. But whether it's the big agents of change like these trained sustainability puppets, or really just the latest gatekeepers and careerist prostitutes masquerading as the voice of reason, you know the ones. Wait a minute, there's loads of them, isn't there? That fake yuppie prat from Bristol, careerist non-entity, bootlicker for slave masters. There's loads of them, isn't there? Alex Belfield, Anna Breeze, Russell Brand. Oh, the new age, that's it, the new age used car dealer, and of course financial expert from Marbella. They all masquerade and play act for the wilderness of the mind. This is very disturbing because, have you noticed, even some of your friends are going along with the gatekeeping. Very dangerous times indeed. But having seen the hopelessness of these new age retards, it is clear the globalists are right about some things. These people are just not sustainable, vibrant, resilient, or even diverse. Most of them don't really have a proper personality, but let's leave that out of it for now. You might as well listen, in a way, to real fantasists if you're going to listen to gatekeepers, because I've got really fed up with this over the past few years. There's really hardly any good alternative journalists out there anymore. It's really a problem to find anyone with integrity, but if you're looking for that, you've come to the right place. But otherwise, you might as well listen to real fantasists of the new age. Well, at least they talk about aliens and make up stories about time travel and abduction. Well, of course, when will it be the real 2012, the ascension? When will the portal open? When will we have disclosure? Get our nirvana, our crypto pocket money. Isn't everybody going to get it? Well, when they move the goalposts again, of course. False prophecies and hopium are everywhere, aren't they? Good evening to everybody in chat. I'm going to have a look at it now and see who's in there. Because last week, I had a good look afterwards, and there were a fair amount of what they call internet trolls on there. But I'm hoping this week, Monthly Blimpton and associated protectors of the Windows on the World forum will jump in if there's any trouble afoot. There isn't really. Most of it's all about just trying to be a bit subversive. But yeah, false prophecies, hopium, you won't get any of that here, unfortunately, so please turn off now if you want some of that. But the wilderness of the mind has been achieved, hasn't it? The minds of many are a borderless Pangaea of emptiness filled with fleeting moments of candy floss and waffle, to be forgotten about when the next distraction comes along. This has been a bit frustrating, actually, because I've been putting out facts about what was going to happen for years, and they forget about it very quickly, and they're not really interested in engaging. They? Who are they? They? Well, my ex-friends, and probably your ex-friends as well. But for those who like facts, in all seriousness, it is a tough time indeed. The lies are coming for you like never before. The distractions are many, but do stay focused. It's not going to stop now. Never have more people been more stupid. Your neighbours will deny the facts and attack you. Previously, they just thought you were a conspiracy theorist. Now you are a biological hazard. They're really ramping it up, aren't they? But do choose carefully who you associate with. Never have the public been so dangerously deluded by such provable fraud and deception. And in actual fact, the reason I mentioned all that at the beginning is that the controlled opposition are worse than the useful idiots, because people actually believe that these people have something to say which is not being said in the mainstream, which of course they don't. You've been cheated. Things are moving fast. It is all coming your way. But what a raft of information we have in this show in a world of, well, disinformation. Let's get on first to this story. The UK Guardian recently ran a story in which they stated the horrific implications of the word cake being mentioned more than climate change. Yes, they actually did a study, this group, and found that the word cake was used many more times than climate change. And in a climate emergency, this is a big problem, isn't it? Let's get into this. Cake mentioned 10 times more than climate change on UK TV. This is an exclusive report. And the study also shows banana bread was heard more in 2020 than wind power and solar power combined. Cake was mentioned 10 times. Yes, more often than climate change. The research showed that banana bread was a more frequently heard term than wind and solar power. Yes, this group actually exists. They're called Albert, and Caris Taylor is the director. Now, have you ever wondered who these people are who work in media but don't seem to have a clue about anything, and they make loads of money? I was talking to someone about it the other day, and it's absolutely true, isn't it? You just wonder what these people do. Well, here's living proof of people who don't have anything to do. Here we go. According to their website, Albert are the authority on environmental sustainability for film and TV. But have you ever wondered why there are so many brainless fools or Guardian readers who appear as part of these organisations that you've never heard of? It's quite amazing, isn't it? This is what this hidden industry is all about. It's all about sustainability. But imagine counting how many times the word cake is used and balancing it with the words climate change. That's conclusive evidence right there that we are heading for the end times, isn't it? It says, we're funded by the industry, that's Albert by the way, allowing us to make our tools, training and resources totally free to use. Has anybody out there looked at their website? I don't think so. Albert said, in any normal year, a drop in climate change mentions would be a worrying headline, but 2020 was no normal year. Well, of course it's not. There's a pandemic about. Climate change had to take a back seat, didn't it? This Caris Taylor said the coronavirus pandemic had dominated the media, and restrictions on filming meant more repeats and shows based on archive footage were shown. Can you imagine having a job at this place and actually putting this out as a story? That's absolutely incredible, isn't it? But if we now look at what the Guardian are saying about this new climate change group, this is of course what we reported on last week. They're called Insulate Britain, and it's under the banner of climate crisis. Well, if there's a climate crisis, it's turned out nice again, hasn't it? Motorway blockades and Green New Deal crusaders, the UK's new climate activists. With COP26 on the horizon, activists are finding new ways to make politicians and the public pay attention. This is, of course, taking over from Extinction Rebellion. It says a new wave of climate activism, or basically globalist disruption, during which motorways have been blocked and politicians confronted by young people. Well, actually, a lot of these people are old tossers, the ones I've seen sat down on motorways. Virtue signalling, Guardian reading, mentally enfeebled, educated beyond their intelligence, idiots. They're attempting to put pressure on the UK government before the UN COP26 climate conference in Glasgow later this year. Obviously, all they're doing is lobbying for their own genocide. Well, that's the Guardian for you. But the logical fallacies, ad hominems and ridiculous off-topic arguments made by the mentally enfeebled but petty-minded small thinkers here are surely even more evidence, if more evidence was needed, against the discredited and redundant theory of evolution which these same people push as though it was a known fact. That's the point. It doesn't matter what is true. It only matters what the majority believe is true. And here we do have a bit of a problem. But looking on the bright side, most of my friends or previous friends are now ex-friends. Do you find the same thing? If it wasn't through the climate con, it was through COVID. I've shed loads of them. I've actually shed hundreds and hundreds of friends over the past 5 years. And it's great because they would have let me down anyway when I needed them. So the globalists have done me a big favour in a way. But these people seem to view everything through the same lens, don't they? And we know what that lens is. They all hate the same things. And you know what they hate, don't you? Well, they believe in right and left. Bigger things to them are a conspiracy theory and the rest is now history. Well, at least that's positive. The great thing, though, is the fork in the road. They would have let you down anyway, these people. So, in a way, the globalists have done us a big favour. We now have hundreds of ex-friends. When the time comes, though, make no mistake, they will be the enemy. So, if you're hanging on to any of these idiots, drop them and don't waste any more time in doing so. We are in the middle of a genocide. Did you not know? Imagine having to find out further down the line, though, that these people were indeed that stupid. The globalists have saved a lot of time and trouble, really, as far as that goes. I'm actually quite grateful because these fake left, fake virtue signalling idiots would have caused a lot of problems in the very near future, wouldn't they? They would, wouldn't they, really? Let's have a little interlude before we carry on with some killer and dynamite information.
Welcome to Windows on the World, and the concept of how Earth run today. Because today, the way the world run today, they're not running by the law of life. Because the law of life is just one law. But they create their law to go around the law of life.
Well, after that short break, we're going to get into some killer information as promised. Mad cow disease has made a comeback in Somerset. Yes, just one cow identified at the moment, but as somebody rightfully said on our forum, wait till Neil Ferguson gets his hands on that. Yes, it's all coming in faster and faster and faster. Virtue signalling, with even mental midgets blocking the M25, getting ready to be slaughtered. The agents of change are everywhere and it's a big business, but not for you. The World Bank and the UN want you in smart city gulags eating bugs on carbon credits, and that's if you are allowed to live that long. Yeah, that's what's really been going on and being planned for a long time. I did try and warn people, but they thought that 20 miles per hour zones and speed humps would not result in a genocide. And I did say, well, it will happen, you know. Let's have a look what Associated Press put out. This is the new World Bank steering report called Groundswell. The report says climate change could see 200 million move by 2050. Now, that's mainly in their own countries. It says under the most pessimistic scenario, with a high level of emissions and unequal development, the report forecasts up to 216 million people moving within their own countries across the 6 regions analysed. Wait for it. Those regions are Latin America, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, Eastern Europe and Central Asia, South Asia and East Asia and the Pacific. The gulags are being designed and it's all happening. Even the detention centres are being built, but will they need them? Will the ongoing genocide? Oh, Genesis, that's right. They're making a comeback as well, aren't they? Poor old Phil Collins doesn't look too well. I didn't realise that he'd fallen down the stairs and broke his back. I've been out of the business for so long, I'm just not keeping up with things these days. Yes, the ongoing genocide. Will this be sorted out before 2030? This is not being negative here. I'm trying to be realistic, but if you're going to make ridiculous predictions with no foundation or evidence-based models and projections, evidence-based models and projections, have we heard that before? Well, let's have a get-out clause or 3. Let's see what the World Bank actually say after this report. It's really quite interesting, actually, because it conclusively proves that these people don't believe a word of any of it. Let's see. This is from the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, their get-out clause. Here is a preface to their BS report, which is part of the global relocation of all remaining bioslaves into smart surveilled gulags, as we've just reported. Let's see what they say. This work is a product of the staff of the World Bank with external contributions. The findings, interpretations and conclusions expressed in this work do not necessarily reflect the views of the World Bank, so why publish it? Or its board of executive directors or the governments they represent. The World Bank does not guarantee the accuracy of the data included in this work. Even they know it's a scam, of course, because they were in on it from the start. The World Environmental Facility set up in 1987 at the World Wilderness Congress. I think I've brought this up a few times. Then later at Rio, when it all kicked off, they knew this was the new way to control things. This was the death of the old capitalism and the birth of the new fake greenery, where everybody would be part of the new system and no one will be left behind. But as we've stated previously, of course, this is nothing to do with the climate. It's business. It's their business. And your eternal slavery and premature demise. That's what they're planning for. The business was set up, as I said, many years ago. How to rule the world through propaganda and coercion. Yes, we've covered it all over the years. In the short term, though, higher taxes, food shortages, artificial scarcity, and now even, wait for it, you know, you've heard it, CO2 shortages. There's no turkeys for Christmas, but it seems there's plenty of turkeys voting for it. Being cheated is the new normal. Meanwhile, the World Economic Forum states, and of course these are partners of the World Bank, the UN and all of its agencies. Let's see what they do say on the World Economic Forum. A major milestone for direct air CO2 capture. The world's biggest carbon capture and storage machine launched last week in Iceland. It's called Orca. According to Swiss startup Climeworks, the company which built the plant, it will capture 4,000 metric tons of CO2 per year and bury it underground. What does the Orca plant foretell about this technology, asks the World Economic Forum, the potential drawbacks, areas of concern, and why carbon capture technologies are integral to addressing climate change? Well, find out by going to the World Economic Forum and looking further into that article. The collective beneficiaries are ramping up the fear, and rationing for all is definitely coming. Be prepared. Be prepared, because the zombies in your street will lose their minds if they haven't lost them already. Check out the comments section on any controversial issue such as the COVID plan or climatardation and see how there is now a big divide. There is a two-polar world, them and us. Well, that's you if you're full enough of hate-filled conspiracy theories, of course, or in reality, just have an inquiring mind. Meanwhile, the UN say the planet is on a catastrophic global warming path. The UN report shows the planet, it says, is careering toward warming of 2.7 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, far above what scientists say the world should be targeting, according to a report on global emissions targets by the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now, having followed this for many years and read many of their summary documents and indeed a lot of their reports, one thing is very clear. It's a complete load of cobblers, and many scientists, many good scientists with an ounce of integrity or more, have resigned and called it out for what it is. So scientists, or in reality, the World Bank, UN and its agencies have said, wait for it, the planet needs to slash 45% of its emissions by 2030 to reach carbon neutrality by mid-century. But under current emissions commitments from countries, there will be a 16% increase in emissions in 2030 compared to 2010 levels, according to the report. Well, this is all very contradictory, isn't it? Because if they achieve what they say they're going to achieve, there's going to be no cars on the road at all, and there's going to be very few people here by 2030. So don't worry, though. None of it is about any facts, of course. It's just more lies to up the ongoing smart genocide. If you have any research into any of the UN IPCC reports, you will find one thing is consistent. Its lack of ability to accurately predict the apocalypse its lobbyists have been forecasting for the last 30 or 40 years. The UN IPCC, of course, was set up to prove that man-made global warming exists. It wasn't actually set up for any other reason apart from that. Well, obviously to impose policy through the UN. It is a lobbying body of the UN. Under sustainable development, of course. But in a world of critical thinkers, none of this, including the COVID plan, would have got off the ground. Think about that. If we were allowed to have real science, real debate, and not consensus, none of this would have got anywhere. It would have been shot down 30 years ago. So, the predicted food shortages have been manufactured through, wait for it, a CO2 shortage. I thought that's what they wanted, which was just really what the IPCC were hoping for, wasn't it? Yeah, they want to suck it out of the atmosphere and make it very expensive too. It's all a bit ironic, isn't it? But I don't think we can say ironic because we are in the middle of the ongoing genocide and things are really ramping up for Christmas. But in a statement about this report, UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres called the planet's current path catastrophic. Well, the only thing catastrophic would be if the public found out what lies these people were actually telling. But would it be catastrophic? I don't know, because the lies at the moment are so big. How can the public even let them get away with it? How can they let their kids into school anymore when the schools are openly telling them that if they resist their children being vaccinated, the children will override their parents' decision and the police will be called to the school. Yes, I've actually got an example of a letter by a change agent from a local school, which I think I'll read out tomorrow night because it's so sickening, and I'll name the culprit. This is what we should be doing, naming and shaming these useful idiots who are going along with this. It's the only way. But the only catastrophic thing is that the captive governments of the world are implementing this kill grid called sustainability, and many of the spellbound population are, of course, virtue signalling to be part of their own demise. Let's see what else this report said. This is breaking the promise made 6 years ago to pursue the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of the Paris Agreement, Guterres said. All of this, of course, is made up. Failure to meet this goal will be measured in the massive loss of lives and livelihoods. Well, they've already got that underway. It's not going to be the weather that kills anyone. Well, if it were not for logical fallacies, the false and deceptive statements made by these people, none of this would even exist. There wouldn't be climate change without the propaganda. There wouldn't be a climate emergency without the propaganda. Well, of course, there'll always be climate change because it changes every day. We've proved this over the years. I've gone into so many of these papers, and at this point in time, I think that if people can't get it by now, then they never will. And unfortunately, as we've said at the beginning of the show, many of them, of course, never will. The comments on the media output prove that communitarian hive mind thinking has really caught on, hasn't it? Unless, of course, you're far right and full of hate. You're not, are you? You're not far right and full of hate, are you? The new terms, of course, for a logical and well-researched argument. That's what that is. Against a barrage of lies. Yes, we are in difficult times, but I do intend to make it entertaining. Tomorrow night, oh no, actually we did it last week, we did Monday, didn't we? I'm going to do Tuesday, 9:30 p.m. We might do this every week. We're going to have a slightly satirical look at what's going on, mixed with a lot of information and hopefully some solutions, because lots of people now are really putting their nose to the grindstone. I hope you are, dear listener. I'll be back in a minute. I'm just going to have another quick break. It's all going quite speedily tonight, isn't it? A lot of information, though. Hope you're enjoying it. The return of sovereignty. Was the return of sovereignty. Talking of sovereignty, I hear that Malcolm, common law Malcolm, is at this moment in the kitchen preparing his manifesto. So he's not coming onto the show this week, but he's going to outline the solutions to all the problems that are facing the living flesh and blood men and women of this Isle of Albion. Probably next Sunday at about this time. But in the meantime, do keep your powder dry and don't go telling anybody, because we're going to need Article 61 of the Magna Carta. You know that, don't you? Now let's move on to Ivamektin. Uttar Pradesh, India, announces state is COVID-19 free, proving the effectiveness of the deworming drug Ivamektin. This was published on September the 15th by the Gateway Pundit, and there's several other sources to this story. The Gateway Pundit previously reported that COVID cases are plummeting in India thanks to new rules that promote Ivamektin and hydroxychloroquine to its massive population. The 33 districts in Uttar Pradesh, India, have now become free from the COVID-19, the government informed on Friday. So this is fairly recent, but this goes back quite a long way, and that's why it's an interesting story. The recovery rate has increased up to 98.7%, proving the effectiveness of Ivamektin as part of the Uttar Pradesh COVID control model. Now, what they're doing here is they're fighting back against the useful idiot at the UN. So it doesn't really matter so much how much COVID they had or didn't have. This is quite a good sign. Of course, the media won't mention that Ivamektin is being used for the treatment of COVID-19, but this state in India has an estimated population of 241 million people and has the highest population in India, that's Uttar Pradesh. This is almost 2/3 of the United States population in 2021, and yet it is now a COVID-free nation, it says here, or region. And this state is one of the 5 lowest COVID cases of all states in India, despite having only a low vaccination rate of around 5.8%. It's probably even less than that. And that's fully vaccinated, compared to the United States that has 54% of its population fully vaccinated, it says here. This has been backed up with the fact that health professionals in India want the Indian Bar Association basically the Indian Bar Association, has rebuked the World Health Organization chief scientist over Ivamektin guidelines for COVID treatment. This is where it gets interesting, because this happened several months ago. WHO chief scientist Soumya Swaminathan, that's what this woman is called, and I've heard her speaking, and she is indeed a treacherous change agent. Yes, the big C word. Let's get into this. The Indian Bar Association say it has served a second legal notice to World Health Organization chief scientist Soumya Swaminathan for allegedly running a disinformation campaign against Ivamektin after the World Health Organization failed to recommend use of the antiparasitic drug as a COVID-19 treatment due to a lack of evidence of efficacy. The Mumbai-based IBA, the Indian Bar Association, sent a 51-page notice to Swaminathan on the 25th of May. None of this is visible to the readers of The Guardian and victims of the Beeb, by the way, because I was looking today at some posting on YouTube under a Daily Mail report, and idiots on there are saying Ivamektin doesn't work. Of course, they've been looking at the report, which has now been discredited even by the British Medical Journal, I believe. However, the UK Guardian of Global Mafia Rhetoric states that, of course, Ivamektin doesn't work. It also is, to get onto another story, talking about this carbon dioxide shortage. That is coming out every day now, but this is very encouraging if you look into this story about Ivamektin, and this woman is at least being rebuked by the Indian Bar Association, and that is a very good thing. Could it possibly be the start of something? Of course, it won't get into the mainstream media, but it is great ammunition against those who we have been talking about thus far in the show. But this carbon dioxide shortage, we'll get onto that now. The UK carbon dioxide shortage could force farmers to cull pigs, soaring energy prices, slow production of gas used to stun animals before slaughter in abattoirs. Now, of course, this is all part of the ongoing plan to cause the rationing, the shortages, to stop people eating meat. I was reading an article today which is basically a modelled prediction of how smart cities are going to operate, and they're trying it out in London. 33 metres underground near New Spitalfields Market in East London. They are developing the technology for you to be eating bugs, and they're farming it underground along with other produce, but they're not very clear in this report as to what the other produce is, which is why I haven't brought it up on the show, but I will be looking more into that. But now is the best time to start becoming self-sufficient or start storing stuff. It is all happening. The great cull is on the way. Meanwhile, let's have a look at what Zero Hedge reports. Fire at UK-France subsea power cable could trigger winter blackouts. We've been talking about this for years. In fact, if you have a look at a previous video at windowsontheworld.net, and it's called Green Energy Agenda Explained, two major suppliers to the national grid, AXA and Green Frog, both told me independently that the UK was heading for power cuts because the national grid is stretched at full capacity, and these people who sell electricity said that they can't cope. One day, very soon, they said, this was 2 years ago, there will be power cuts in the UK. So here it is. Here's the inciting incident. Is it a sign of things to come? Of course it is, because artificial scarcity is what drives sustainability. That's the whole point. Let's see what it says. A fire in a subsea cable has dramatically reduced power imports from France until next March. UK's National Grid plc said, deepening the energy crisis that threatens winter blackouts for millions. So there you go, get yourself a generator, a diesel one, just to upset the virtue signalling lefties next door. A few days ago, yes, it says, food shortages could be permanent, warns industry body. This was business reporter at BBC News. Let's see what this said. The just-in-time system is no longer working, and I don't think it'll work again, Food and Drink Federation boss Ian Wright said at an Institute for Government event on Friday. This was a week ago. Mr. Wright warned that the UK was in for permanent shortages. However, it didn't mean the country would run out of food, he stressed. Well, of course it's not going to run out of food. Got enough food stored for years. That's not the point. It's about the rationing. It's the rationing that's important. It's about the appearance of scarcity. A spokesman for the government said it did not recognise claims of permanent shortages. Well, of course it wouldn't. The latest bombardment is just to get the public used to rationing of everything: energy, food, transport, access to hospitals, financial dependence on the World Bank via loss of inheritance, national insurance and tax hikes. The world debt reset will bring them all to their knees. This is what they want. And in the middle of a pantomime, the likes of which have never been witnessed. Oh, yes, it has. Well, actually, oh, no, it hasn't. Never have so many been fooled by so few, but with the complicity of so many. Yes, that's the big communitarian system, as we said last week. You only need a small ruling elite, and the administrators and the serfs now police each other. Meaning, of course, the elite don't really have to. But without the social engineering of the last 100 years, and particularly the last 10 years, none of this would have been possible. The war could not have been won, the global coup could not have been staged if the public had access to the ability to think clearly and apply reason, along with the reasoning to search for facts which easily counter the imposed assault. That is a fact. So we are in an information war. So do arm yourself with good facts, because the opposition to global tyranny has so far, at least in the UK, fallen short, and useful idiots have been promoted. Useful idiots who have undermined the information which we should all be putting out, the real facts. That's what I'm referring to, of course. But the ability to have any kind of autonomy has been under attack through this fake green tyranny for many years, and now it's closing time for the car, especially in the UK. Wait for it. Drivers face a pay-by-the-mile fee to drive under shock new government proposal. It's all coming at once, folks. The toll system could be introduced to tackle, wait for it, you'll never guess, climate change. Why don't they just say COVID? It doesn't matter. They're both drivers, aren't they? Drivers of change, not drivers of cars, though. The charge may be introduced to raise money for the UK government and to help reach climate change targets. According to recent reports, the toll system could be introduced to all roads in the UK. All roads in the UK. Tolls are currently restricted to some bridges and areas such as the M6 toll, where car drivers pay about £7 to use the motorway. Well, the M6 toll is actually worthwhile. I don't mind paying for that one, but imagine it if you had to pay by the mile. And of course, new cars are going to have this GPS tracking in so that you can be tracked by the mile. And of course, they're going to slow down when you are going too fast, and they can be stopped at any time. Yes, remotely. Don't need the police. Other pre-existing systems, it says, see drivers have to pay a congestion charge to drive in London, of course. But now combine that with all these new low-emission zones, like the proposed one in Manchester, which wants to ban camper vans, and, of course, the new fuel mandate and the assault on those who may wish to have some freedom by owning camper vans and the ability to travel freely. This will be gone in a matter of months. Everywhere now, the communitarians are ganging up in force to stop people in camper vans being able to park anywhere outside of these controlled campsites. What is the point of owning a vehicle with four wheels which you can drive anywhere if you're going to put it into one of these places where you have to plug into their power supply and basically put up with loads of other people? What's the point? There isn't one. The assault is relentless, and now the final stages basically of UN Agenda 2030 are being completed through COVID even faster than through the fake enviro monster that started with billionaires and the World Bank at Rio in 1992. The worrying thing for the thinker these days is that they have been left behind. The communitarian indoctrinees are ready to pull out the knives as soon as common sense is uttered. Common sense is not for the common good. The liars and careerist traitors who make up the global fake consensus have now been exposed. Well, look at Biden. This is the best example of a country under a dictatorship with a barely functioning brain-damaged puppet up front. But New Zealand and Australia, haven't they excelled themselves in the useful idiot for globalism department? Who trained these monkeys? Well, I think we know, don't we? Let's have a look at what is going on back in the UK now. And let's have a look at a great example of the hypocrisy of these vile creatures who call themselves politicians. Labour condemns new Trade Secretary for tweets rejecting climate science. In other words, she opposed globalism and called it out. But now, of course, she's not going to do that because her fat nose is in the trough. Anne-Marie Trevelyan dismisses those who believe in global heating as fanatics in resurfaced posts. So, this worthless fake has now sold out for shekels. Let's see what it says. This is from the Daily Mail, I think. The new International Trade Secretary, Anne-Marie Trevelyan, has been accused of rejecting the science behind the climate emergency. Have you noticed it's an emergency? But have you noticed any emergency? I think it's turning out quite nice these days. After a series of tweets, it came to light showing her dismissing those who believe in global heating as fanatics. Well, I think that's a kind of generous term for them, isn't it? Labour has condemned the appointment of Trevelyan, who was elevated from junior business minister, which took in the brief of promoting clean growth, to replace Liz Truss, the new Foreign Secretary, as part of Boris Johnson's reshuffle on Wednesday. Labour has condemned this, of course. The opposition unearthed a series of tweets from 2010 and 2012 that explicitly reject the science of global heating. Well, that's a logical fallacy in itself, isn't it? The science of global heating. Well, there's global heating as long as you leave the sun out of it, and we're responsible. Let's see. Clear evidence that the ice caps aren't melting after all, she said. To counter those doom mongers and global warming fanatics, read one of her tweets. Another, sent in support of a campaign against wind farms, said, "We aren't getting hotter. Global warming isn't actual." Oh, maybe she said it isn't actually happening. It cut off there. But if that's what she said, it's not grammatically very good. One would hope these hypocrites would be judged accordingly, but they obviously do not believe in fate or anything else, and that's the dilemma. We're in an age of delusion brought about and enabled by criminals and criminal minds. The promoted are less than average and extremely duplicitous. Let's now look at the failed liar Matt Hancock. He's back and he's still lying to the public. The Daily Mail published this propaganda piece from this vile creep, and you just wonder, are they doing it to test public stupidity? Newsflash, news just in, I think they are. Matt Hancock returns to the fray. He says, "In all my time in public life, I have never come across a group so blinkered and dangerous as anti-vaxxers." By Matt Hancock for the Mail on Sunday. Can you believe this? Schools closed, hospitals nearing their capacity, where people stuck at home and thousands sadly dying each day. This was the shocking reality of the global COVID pandemic we faced in 2020. This year, though, is different. Our freedom, our way of life is being restored, says Matt Hancock. People are slowly and carefully regaining the confidence to reclaim their lives. We are learning to live with COVID. But I thought he'd been kicked out and he was never going to be seen again. These people have got more front than Margate, haven't they? He says, while of course we need to be vigilant, we can start restoring what makes life worth living. Whoopee! Great! He says families are once again able to reunite with their loved ones. Weddings, christenings and family celebrations are back on. Businesses can open up with more confidence. In fact, by some measures, Britain has the fastest economic recovery of all the Western major nations. The reason we can do this, says Hancock, and in truth the only real difference between this year and last are the vaccines. Almost 90% of those over 16 have had one dose. More than 4 in 5 have had 2 doses. The fact he's able to put this out in this globalist lying press release is proof that the UK has been well and truly subverted ideologically. He says, I'm incredibly grateful to each and every person who got the jab because they have played their part and made COVID so much easier to manage, and the new booster jabs will help protect the over 50s and the vulnerable yet more. Well, that's in the same week as a CDC report from certain parties who contributed to it saying that there's no evidence for that whatsoever, and much more damning material than that. Damning on these vaccines, and that's people who are reporting to the CDC. The communitarian word salad and the training of this worthless empty shell into a life of barefaced lying is a great testimony to the British change agent centres of academia, basically, where the likes of this spineless creep flourish and are of course mentored and promoted. He says, however, wait for it, the great Matt Hancock speaks, however, almost unbelievably, there is still a persistent, yet thankfully small and shrinking group of people determined to try to stop this progress. In all my time in public life, I have never come across a group so blinkered and dangerous as anti-vaxxers. The subversion of this piece of trash is breathtaking, isn't it? He says, and while almost 9 in 10 people have had the jab, that still leaves 1 in 10 who haven't. A small number of these have medical reasons for why they can't be jabbed. Well, yes, of course. The medical reasons are as follows. It's not been tested, and all the evidence seems to point that it's quite dangerous. And pointless as well. He says, yet we know that the more people get jabbed, the less likely the virus is to spread, the more the NHS is protected, and the easier it is to open up our society and economy. Getting the jab isn't just about protecting yourself, but about protecting others, the big communitarian hive mind we. It's not just about you. It is a social and moral obligation, says this lying piece of trash. When the likes of Hancocks say we know, then you know they're lying. Unbelievable, isn't it? The public in general, are they any better? The willingness of the public to participate in their own genocide is a historic moment in the Agenda 2030 goals, is it not? But he says the result of this colossal effort is that we know the jabs are safe. In the UK, we have put a huge effort into tracking every side effect. Can you believe this? And every time a jab has caused a problem. Experts at Public Health England have followed up with intensive research, and the experienced team at the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, have carefully recorded and published all the data there is. This is quite unbelievable, is it not? This is gaslighting and lying on a scale which he didn't even indulge himself in previously when he did have a job. He says, so we now know the impact the vaccines have. Quite incredible, quite incredible. And then he's having a go at protesters. He says, but you can get a sore arm or a headache for a day or two, but more serious side effects are very rare indeed. They don't affect fertility, they don't insert tracking devices in your blood, and no, it's not a conspiracy masterminded by some sort of all-powered lizard men. This is where, of course, the logical fallacies come in, and this is why the people who spoke at those rallies, including, of course, the man who introduced lizard people, are as good as counterintelligence. He says, though, on the contrary, the COVID vaccines rollout is one of the most intensively researched, clinically led, carefully monitored programmes any government has ever embarked upon, alongside the wonderful NHS teams across the UK. When someone has questions, maybe because they have seen misleading material on social media, let's answer those questions with science and respond to hesitancy with reassuring facts. Well, can you remember him ever doing that? No, of course not. This is quite incredible. He says, the people I reserve my vitriol for are those who promote anti-vax lies. I find it hard to believe, but it's a shocking fact that there is a small number of aggressive, noisy, threatening people who think it is right and fair to try to stop others from getting vaccinated. Well, that sums up the world of COVID, doesn't it? Audacious lies, misdirection, simple subversion propaganda, and all coming from willing agents who have no substance, ethereal, corporal or material. The world is inhabited with a large number of empty shells at this point in history. The apocalypse is therefore a good idea for those who stick it out. Things can only get better. Absolutely incredible, isn't it? Isn't it incredible? And meanwhile, the computer modelling design freaks are planning your future, chomping insects and being surveilled in real time, having their World Bank carbon tax starvation allowance restricted to the bare essentials, while cycling around monitoring, of course, their communitarian gulags. That's the future. And all this, of course, after police reports of a strong personality who might be able to think critically and form an argument. This is, of course, the new hate speak. That's the future for the communitarians. Time, really, to get the priesthood together in your local area before it's too late. And remember, in closing, ridicule is a potent weapon, so use it. But also remember to have some facts at your disposal, because they're all there now. And on our forum, our Discord forum, many people are posting really useful stuff. So get on there and arm yourself with some facts and make some friends. And remember, all those friends you've lost, it's all for the common good. Just imagine what it could have been like in the future if you'd have stayed in contact with these dangerous, useful idiots. That's it for this show. There'll be more during the week, actually. Again, it's been a whirlwind of a week. This Tuesday, I will be back doing a live stream. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was informative. Do keep in touch through the website. Help us out on PayPal and Patreon if you can. I'm going to be putting out loads of stuff this week, a few surprises too. That's it for this show. I'm going to have a look in chat now and see you all soon. Thanks a lot for listening.